water and granola bars at the back. I know it's not as hot as it was a few days ago, but the heat catches up with all of us. So please stay hydrated and get some sugar if you need it. So, we're here today to talk about democracy. As state after state is restricting and suppressing the vote, often hurting black and brown voters the most, we here believe that New Jersey needs to take a stand. We need to show the country, we need to show the world that we don't fear democracy here. We embrace it. But we can't be a leader in democracy if we're behind 20 other states and DC on this one issue. We can't have arbitrary, unnecessary obstacles of casting your vote and call ourselves a leader. So today, we're here today in Trenton to urge the legislature to reflect our values, to embrace democracy, to pass same-day registration. So I will turn it over to our very first speaker, one of the prime sponsors on the bill and chair of the Legislative Black Caucus and a champion of democracy, Assemblywoman Siobhan Sumter.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Are we defending democracy? Are we defending democracy? All right. So, New Jersey, I am pleased to have all of you at work with me here today. I'm Assemblywoman Siobhan Sumter from the 35th Legislative District, which includes Patterson. I'm also the chair of the New Jersey Legislative Black Caucus. It is important that we have you as partners, each and every one of you, to be sure that we're on the right side of history and the right side of her story. Absolutely. We want to be sure as faith leaders, as neighbors, as family members, that we continue to expand access to the fundamental right of voting. We've done some great work in a 10-year period, some great work. And let me just tell you about that great work. We expanded voting registration for persons at age 17, so when they're 18, they get that voter notice in the mail so they know where they're going to vote. We expanded voting for any reason, and you don't need a doctor's note, you don't need a military waiver to receive a vote by mail at home, so you can, from the comforts of your home, vote in any election. We expanded voting so that you can vote early for municipal elections, for county elections, for primaries, as well as general elections. We expanded voting since 1844 for persons on probation or parole, which impacted over 83,000 people in the state of New York. So now we have another, what they call Herculean lift. They call it a Herculean lift because we got to build political willpower. We have to build the wind, we have to build the courage, we have to build the infrastructure, and we have to tell people, yes, we can. Yes, we can. Do same-day voter registration. Give me a yes, we can. Yes, we can make sure that when you show up at a polling site, if you're 18 or older, that you can vote on the same day and register, and we can handle it. Yes, we're New Jersey. Woo! So yes, we can be sure that we further enfranchise the over 9 million people in our state to elect a person of their peers to serve in either municipal government, state government, county government, federal government, or on their school boards. Can we say yes, we can? Yes, we can. So I'm looking forward, and you got some trailblazers up here who have big voices, some trailblazers out there who knows how to march who knows how to pick up the phone, who knows how to text, use social media to be sure that we get the message out, that we're ready. We can handle it. So I'm looking forward to you all giving the political will, courage, and power to the New Jersey legislature, both on the Assembly side and the Senate side, to support same-day voter registration in this legislature, to get it to the governor's desk so we can continue our progressive movement of enfranchising voters in the state of New Jersey. Can I get it one more time? Yes. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Assemblywoman Sumter, for rallying the troops right at the beginning. So I will turn it over to Asada Mann from the League of Women Voters. I just realized I didn't necessarily introduce myself. My name is Patel Patel. I am the Director of Democracy and Justice Program at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. Can't believe they got me following up after Shavonda Sumter, legend. Well, like Channel said, my name is Asada Mann. I'm a community organizer with the League of Women Voters in New Jersey, and I'm so happy to have you all out here with us this afternoon to rally for same-day voter registration. As many of you know, for over 100 years, the League has worked to empower voters and defend democracy. Not only do we register voters, host candidate forums, and do civic education, but we also advocate on issues. We fight to make democracy work, which means making democratic participation, including voting, easier and more accessible. Our campaign for same-day voter registration is just a continuation of that work. As an organization committed to nonpartisanship, we don't support bills because they're good for Democrats or because they're good for Republicans, and we won't support a bill because it's good for politicians. We support bills because they're good for voters and because they're good for our democracy. And this is a common sense pro-voter bill. It takes the tool of provisional ballots, which we're already using at our polling locations around the state, and it just provides eligible voters with another opportunity to cash in on what is their right to vote. Same-day voter registration recognizes the fact that sometimes life happens, right? And people who otherwise meet all the requirements to participate in an election might not be on the rolls. But we don't think they should be turned away or lose their right to vote because of what is really an arbitrary administrative requirement. So listen, as legislators are taking some steps right now to pass bills that have the potential to disenfranchise voters, they must also be having same-day voter registration be part of the conversation. We cannot be talking about shortening the deadline to return your mail ballots or increasing the frequency at which we're removing voters from the rolls without also talking about same-day voter registration. It's a safeguard that's needed because people are always continuously, every election, falling between the cracks. 20 other states already do this, so it's long time for New Jersey to catch up. We can't ignore all of the things that have been happening in our world over the past few weeks, the past few months, the past few years, really, right? No matter what your issue is, whether it's reproductive rights, gun control, climate change, racial justice, or police reform and accountability, the ballot is one of the strongest tools we have to drive the change. Voting rights are the foundation. Voting rights are the foundation to all other rights. And we're all here today because we know that a better future and a more inclusive democracy is possible. Same-day voter registration is one of the first steps that we need to take to start making that a reality in New Jersey. So again, thank you all for joining us and being here today to lift up your voices in support of same-day voter registration. Yeah, we need to let Speaker Cochran, Senate President Scutari, and all other legislators know that we have to pass A1966 S247 ASAP. Because for every election that they fail to pass this bill, countless voters get left out of the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Asada. And now it's my honor to introduce yet another champion of the legislation, A1966, and a friend of same-day voter registration, Assemblyman McKeon.
Thanks, everybody. How you doing on this great day? Is it ready to start summer? Listen, as all of us, not to be down, we all have a profound sense of sadness in light of the events over the last 48 hours of the events in May. But having seen the young children just come by, not only did it evoke thoughts, but it evoked the children that you used to be. And that something about you brought you to stand here today for something that's right. And I hope, as sad as we are about those that we've lost, those kids today, as they look through the State House, look back and reflect on the people that you are, that they too will be standing in the same place and defending our democracy. It is my honor and privilege to be here, to work with all of the advocates, God knows, with Citizen Action on a lot of different matters. And thumbs up. We're going to get to the finish line, and I'll do everything I can to be supportive. God bless you all.
Thank you, Assemblyman. All right, so next up, Kevin Bernard from the Montclair NAACP.
Good morning. Peace and blessings, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Again, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Kevin Bernard. I serve as second vice president for the NAACP New Jersey Youth and College Conference, and also serve as the Political Action Chair Committee. Again, what is the power to vote card? It discovers and it exercises those to play our part within our political machines. In every inch of the matter, the power that stands, the power of voting, becomes a fundamental role in democracy. And yet our collection, our service, merely reflects the broad range that has been placed in within our viewpoint and culture, within the effects that have truly existed within our own community. Again, we remain in this steadfast to our mission to voter repression. That voter engagement has been in place within the elections that isn't easy to be even guaranteed. Yet within these process, the need to pass of the bill of A1966 and S247, yet deprived within the initial feelings of the indifference of New Jersey becoming a beacon of hope, a beacon of success, a beacon of example. That within through these matters, decreasing access of the ballot of the box to close this process of barrier, to limit its portion, to open new opportunity. The next moment is giving people every opportunity to participate within the collective movement. Yet that collective movement becomes a self-government. Itself becomes a form of a one-stop shopping. It also refers to the civic function of democracy. As this form fulfilling to the civic function, one is compelled to feel the necessary need to recognize that there is an attempt. This attempt becomes what is made by all of us, one which is real behind the scenes and every meaning behind these words. One that is set within the things that voter registration to be a part of a new beginning to defend our democracy. There is such a thing as a fruitful democracy, the things of a reality that depends on what every human being seems to stand for, and which to stand today. Thank you.
Up next, we have a poster down. For the most part, we're grateful for the reason. So, after that welcome, we have next Ed Podhosnik from the League of Conservation Voters in New Jersey.
Thanks so much, Hannah. Thank you all for being here. Ed Podhosnik, I'm Executive Director of the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. And I'm really proud to stand with all of us together to make something big happen that's going to make a real difference for the state of New Jersey. Some folks may wonder, like, why is an environmental organization, doing anything with elections? Well, it's in our name, New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, so that makes sense that we want to make voting more accessible. In fact, I just recently moved, and I guess on a Saturday, I went to DMV. And on Wednesday, I live in Somerset County, I got a new voter registration card in the mail because I checked the box off to change my voter registration. And so that's literally 2 working days. And what we're asking for is same day. And I think they probably process it same day with the mail the way it works. And it's 2022. We pay our bills on our phones. We can definitely register voters on the same day. So why hasn't that happened? Right? There's one reason, that is change is hard. People don't really like it. It's kind of different. There's a risk. That's why we need all of us to get together with our friends and get us to be bigger to create the political will Assemblywoman Shavonda Sumter talked about. That's what we need. But the big reason is because the business interests, they're benefiting from the system as it is. They invest in politicians. They wrap them around their fingers. And elections, they stand in the way of that relationship they have, because it could change the world for them, and their profits could change. So we have polluters that are against same-day registration. We have the chemical industry that's against same-day voter registration. We have gun manufacturers that are against same-day voter registration. And the list goes on. But who is for same-day voter registration? We are. Moms are for same-day voter registration. Dads, firefighters, teachers, police officers, the faithful, and the list goes on. Because it's important for us. So if we can make the 21-day blackout period go away, if you move within that period, you can still vote. That kind of makes sense. It's a no-brainer. And together, I know that we can. And the environment's going to be safer. Our children in their schools are going to be safer. Our families are going to be safer. And our democracy is going to be sustained. So let's keep this up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. So Ed talked to us about why, if you care about the environment, this issue is also really important. He also mentioned a number of other groups that are important, that care or must care about same-day registration. And with that in mind, I wanted to raise the stat here. The group most affected by same-day registration, or the arbitrary voter registration deadline, I should say, is young people. We see around the country that same-day registration leads to the highest turnout amongst young people. So it's an honor right now to turn it over to a young person herself, Bryce Wistanowicz from the March for Our Lives, New Jersey.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Raisa, and I'm here representing March for Our Lives, New Jersey, which is part of the youth movement to end gun violence that started over 4 years ago in the aftermath of the Parkland and Coral Springs shooting. And we stand here today in the aftermath of an incredibly horrific and tragic news, prepared to again mobilize nationwide because we have seen no movement or action at the federal level on gun violence in those 4 years since our inception. We are in this position because our democracy is fundamentally broken, and because no matter how many lives are lost and traumatized and harmed by gun violence, we continue to see lawmakers not take action. And New Jersey is not an exemption from this trend. We see the same political corruption and apathy in New Jersey, and we see the same pattern of lawmakers saying that we have done enough on voting rights. We have done enough on gun violence prevention. We have done enough on these critical issues, and that we should be satisfied with that. Well, we're not satisfied, and the only reason that we made these strides that we have in voting rights in New Jersey has been because of the efforts of every single one of you and the mobilization that we have had over all of these years, and we are going to continue to mobilize until same-day voter registration is passed. is so important because same-day voter registration helps to heal our democracy. It helps to heal our democracy because it requires a valuing of voters' voices. And that means a valuing of youth voices, a valuing of BIPOC voices, a valuing of the voices of the formerly incarcerated in particular. It helps heal our democracy because it leads to a 10% increase in voter turnout among youth, which is so important. And it helps to heal our democracy because especially among youth, especially as we transition from a point at 18 when we're transitioning in our lives, when we're transitioning to college, we're transitioning to a new job, we are often moving across state and county lines, especially maybe if we're moving from into New Jersey, from one of the 20 states plus DC that has same-day voter registration. We do not have time. We do not have the time and the privilege to be able to prioritize making sure we know about the 21-day in advance voter registration deadline. That is not our priority, and we must make it easier for people to vote, because when we make it easier for people to vote, they vote. I want to thank you all for being here today, and I just want to say that if this demonstration does not send the message that the people of New Jersey not only want same-day voter registration, but we need it, I do not know what will. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone who has organized this. And I'm so honored to be part of this initiative. Thank you.
I'm going to be governor one day. It is an honor to now introduce Assemblyman Raj Mukherjee, who is our champion of A1966 in the Assembly. This is his bill, and he has been working tirelessly to get it moving. Thank you so much, Assembly.
Thank you. Thank you. Same-day voter registration. This is motherhood, fatherhood, apple pie. At a time when our democratic institutions are deteriorating and increasingly under attack throughout the country, where some states are acting to impede voter rights and marginalize certain voices, we have an opportunity here in New Jersey to do something different. We're not reinventing the wheel. This is already, some form of voter registration voting is already available in 21 states and the District of Columbia, and it has consistently been found to be a safe, reliable method of registration, not conducive to fraud. So we have an opportunity here to do something with our low turnout rate. Same-day voter registration has been found to increase participation by as much as 5%, or among 18 to 24-year-olds, a demographic that we need to incentivize to come out and participate in our democracy, by 10%. And that alone is reason enough to move this measure, because we want to see more of our young adults who are eligible to come out and vote and not put up an artificial barrier to voting with an artificial deadline. And it's increasingly important for that demographic to vote because it's fresh in their memories having to do things like active shooter drills in elementary or middle school. It's easier to get a gun in parts of this country than to get baby formula right now, and it will soon be easier to buy a semi-automatic weapon or a 50 cal without a background check in a number of states of this union than it would be to access reproductive care for a woman. So, A1966 would leverage existing infrastructure, and it would be very easy to implement. And that's why I appreciate all of your advocacy so that we can get this done and make New Jersey a leader in increasing access to our democracy and to be able to participate in our democracy. Thomas Jefferson said, "We are not a government of the majority, we are a government of the majority who participate." Let's make it easier, not harder, for people to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. I will turn it over now to my colleague Laura Sullivan, who actually has been impacted herself because of the three-week registration deadline.
Good morning. Thank you, panel. Again, my name is Laura Sullivan. I'm the Director of Economic Justice at the New Jersey Institute for Social like this is going to be so easy. They're asking me if I want to register. I'm here with my new registration and my new residential information. And so I said yes, and I walked away that day thinking I had indeed registered to vote. As the election came along, I found out that in fact I was not registered to vote. I was waiting as a new New Jersey resident for some voter information to come in the mail, and nothing came. I didn't know quite what to expect because I had never lived in New Jersey before, but as a previous voter in other states, I had gotten something in the mail. So I waited, and nothing happened. Then I thought, what if my registration was not in fact processed the way I thought it was? And so I did some research, tried to figure out if I was registered, and in fact, I was not registered. There was some processing or administrative error in that process, and I did not get registered to vote that day in December of 2014 when I thought I did. So by the time I figured all of that out, the registration deadline had already passed, and I was not able to vote in my first election, which I had been looking forward to, in my first election as a New Jersey resident. People move all the time, you know this. I've moved actually on four occasions since I've lived in New Jersey. And we need to be able to make it easier for people to register to vote and to participate in voting. As folks have said, across the country, people are making it harder to vote. And here in New Jersey, we've made some great strides, and we need to make this one to go that even step further so that everyone has access to voting. I appreciate you all being here today, and I know we can do this together. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Laura's story illustrates why it's so important we need this. We hear this sometimes. I hear this all the time, even from the legislators who oppose it, going, why can't people just register? Is it that hard? Honestly, most people try. It's things like this that happen. Laura tried to register. She thought she had. It's not her fault that it didn't go through. Why should she be disenfranchised for that? And she was. And this happens every single cycle. So as we know today, we talked about some of the important issues, important groups, important interests, and why they relate to same-day registration. Same-day registration does also have a faith component. So many of our faiths care about democracy, value it. So first, I'm going to introduce now Rabbi Philip Baisley. He's here today with the New Jersey Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism and the Anshe Emeth Memorial Temple in New Brunswick.
Thank you, Hannah. It's good to see you in person. You know, one of the things that I've been thinking about this morning is how close we are to the heart of American democracy and freedom. Right across the river in Philadelphia is the birthplace of our democratic values. And right across the street from that birthplace is a bell. And on that bell is an inscription from our sacred text, from the Torah. And this text is found within multiple faith traditions. It's Leviticus 25, verse 10. Proclaim liberty throughout the land to all the inhabitants thereof. Now, the word liberty in Hebrew is dror. And oftentimes, Hebrew is not always translated as appropriately as it should. And that word dror, that we translate as liberty, really means a release. It means a release, or to release people from the bonds that prevent them from being free. And what in this country is the measure of being free? The right to vote and being able to execute that right. Tyranny is the absence of a voice for all. Tyranny is preventing people from proclaiming what they need to say and voting for the people that represent them. Our founding fathers called it taxation without representation. And what they fought for and what we now are fighting for is saying that every voice must have a voice, and we need to enable every voice to be heard. So Senate President Scutari, I ask you, why do you want to keep so many people voiceless in this state? Why won't you proclaim liberty for all inhabitants? Why won't you lift up those who find themselves in a state of disenfranchisement? Are you worried about voters being able to voice their votes? Are you scared of individuals executing this inalienable right? Our democratic systems are under attack throughout this country. Don't stall our progress in New Jersey towards making sure every voice counts. Not too long ago, we saw a string of kids walking through this building and seeing all of us, all of you protesting here. If they take anything away from their visit to the state capitol, it should be that when they see an injustice around them, it is incumbent upon them to exercise their voice and to make sure that they get heard and to make sure that liberty gets proclaimed throughout this land. Proclaim liberty throughout the land to all inhabitants doesn't just mean the inhabitants who vote for you or when you feel like it. Proclaim liberty throughout the land to all is not a suggestion, it's a God-given commandment. And we the people are calling on you to let our people vote. Put the bill forward, we demand nothing less. Thank you.
Next up is Amy Torres, the Executive Director of the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. Thank you. When I say voter, you say power. Voter? Power. Voter? Power. When I say voter, you say power. Voter? Power. Voter? Power. My name is Amy Torres. I'm with New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. We are the largest immigration coalition in the state with over 50 members that fight for policies to empower and protect immigrants. Nearly 1 in 4 New Jerseyans is an immigrant, and 1 in 6 citizens has an immigrant parent. That's me. That's someone standing next to you. That makes every issue before this legislature, whether it's housing, education, business, social services, and yes, democracy, an immigrant justice issue. And that means that every barrier to democracy is a barrier to fair housing. Every barrier to democracy is a barrier to desegregated and fairly funded schools. It's a barrier to economic security, and it's a barrier to community empowerment. Every barrier to democracy is a challenge to our power, and we won't stand for that, right? Because when I say voter, you say power. Voter. Power. Voter. Power. Now, we've experienced more than enough of everything in the last 2 weeks, and whether it was the leaked decisions of the Supreme Court, whether it's our black elders gunned down by white supremacists while they're trying to buy food, or our youngest murdered in cold blood in their classrooms, or faithful churchgoers attacked in their sanctuaries, each and every one of these is an emergency. It is an emergency. And what do we hear from our leadership in Washington? They tell us, if you want change, vote in November 1st. Now, personally, that is not a satisfying answer for me. It shouldn't be a satisfying answer for any of us, but as long as that's the answer that they're telling us, why is New Jersey blocking access to the vote? Why is a barrier to voting happening here in our state? A barrier to voting is a barrier to reproductive justice. A barrier to voting is a barrier to racial justice. A barrier to voting is a barrier to safe schools, to safe sanctuary, and to real security. Our communities, we will not stand for it. We've talked about the benefits of this bill. You've heard many advocates before me, but let's debunk the opposition. Opposition says educated voters already know about election deadlines, and we shouldn't infuse our races with easily misled or uneducated voters. That statement is not only wrong, but it reeks of the same sentiments that for years denied women and black folks the right to vote, and for years installed poll taxes and literacy tests. You do not need to be a philosopher or a rocket scientist to vote. You simply need to be eligible, and you deserve, just as I deserve, just as we all deserve, democracy in a day. Other opposition says campaigns are strapped for cash. It's expensive to cast a wide net not knowing who will actually turn up on election day. But in a state like ours, that when you're running for office, you are running to represent every single person in that district. That means the few people who do vote for you. It also means the people that vote against you. It means the people who didn't vote for you, the people who are too young to vote for you, and the people who are ineligible to vote for you. We, as advocates, are happy to have a conversation about publicly financed campaigns. We're happy to have a conversation about campaign finance. This is not a campaign finance bill. This is a democracy bill. And any excuse that you put in front of this bill is an excuse for democracy. It's an excuse for justice for our communities, and we will not stand for it. Now, right now, before I wrap up, right now is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Woo! I'm very proud to be an Asian American and Pacific Islander, especially in a state like New Jersey. And right now, there is a heritage celebration happening on the assembly floor. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, we are the fastest growing racial group, one of the fastest in the nation, one of the fastest here in New Jersey. We also have higher eligibility rates to naturalize and become citizens and voters. But in 2016, one of the most influential elections of our lifetime, over 50% of Asian American and Pacific Islander voters said that they received no outreach from candidates. They received no outreach, not even from nonpartisan get-out-the-vote campaigns. We cannot celebrate the communities that live here unless we are actively working to empower them. We deserve democracy in a day. We deserve empowerment. We live here. We are New Jersey. We are not easily misled. We are not miseducated. We are not ill-informed. Those sentiments have roots in white supremacist ideologies, and we will not stand for them. We are proud to stand here today for Democracy for a Day. When we say voter, you say voter? Voter! Up next, Rabbi Joel Abraham with Faith in New Jersey.
So many groups here today. I'm a board member of Faith in New Jersey, which is a community organizing group that works to lift up the power of those whose voices are so often silenced. But it's good to be here with so many other groups, including RAC New Jersey, which I'm a member of, and other groups which I'm not a member of. Why are we all coming together today to talk about voting? And I'll apologize being the second rabbi up here today. We do represent all sorts of faith groups. I want to acknowledge Imam Safed Kadamit, who is up here with me as well. But you're getting another little lesson on Judaism. I want to tell you about the first vote in my people's history. Coming up to the holiday of Shavuot, when we remember standing at the base of Mount Sinai. And God turned to us as a people and said, you want this covenant? You want to enter into a relationship with me? And as one, we all voted and said, Na'aseh v'nishma, tell us and we'll do it. That was our first universal democratic vote in Judaism, and it is the original core moment when we became a people. And when it's revisited later in the book of Deuteronomy, the moment is described and it says, who was there? Everyone was there. Men, women, and children. Everybody who had every job, whether they drew water, they were still there as well. And not just the people who were there that day, but everyone in the future is a part of that covenant as well. We have a covenant in this nation of voting, of democracy. I can't imagine if I said to my congregation, I know you've all in this boat, there's got to be some of you who sometime in your life or because of COVID maybe didn't register your car in time and were driving on an expired registration. Or sent your taxes in a week or two late. Don't wave your hands. There may be cameras on those. But we didn't throw you out because of that. You still got to pay taxes. So why is it that we can't vote if something goes wrong and we weren't quite there on time? If I said to my congregation, if you haven't paid your dues, you can't set foot in the building and not give them an opportunity on that day, I would have very angry congregants, a very empty congregation. I also live in the 22nd District in New Jersey, which is Senate President Scutari's district. He represents me. And he said that someone has to convince him that to do this sacred right of voting, you have to be able to do that for people who forgot to do it until the day. And I say, Senate President Scutari,
In November, you get 1 vote. How many votes do we all get here? We all get 1 vote too. We elect you to represent our votes. You don't get to say when we can exercise that sacred right. You can't say, in my synagogue, you can't come in and worship. You shouldn't be able to say you can't come in and vote. So join me in a minute if you would say, Senator Scutari.
Senator Scutari!
Let my people vote.
Let my people vote!
Senator Scutari.
Senator Scutari!
Let my people vote.
Let my people vote!
On the other side of the building, louder. Senator Scutari.
Senator Scutari!
Let my people vote.
Let my people vote!
Thank you. So, one quick note, if a couple of people, and we're going to hopefully keep it small because we do want a big crowd here. Rebecca is somewhere, right there. If maybe a few people who trained for lobbying and want to go with her to the hallway now can arrange that. But I will keep this going where our rally is still on. So next up is Alejandra Soto from the ACLU of New Jersey.
Good morning. Well, afternoon. What do we want? Same-day registration. When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Same-day registration!
When do we want it?
Now!
They need to hear us all the way in there, folks. What do we want?
Same-day registration!
When do we want it?
Now!
I'm Alejandra. I'm the campaign strategist with ACLU, and I'm so proud to stand here with you all today as we fight to tear down barriers to our democracy in our state. Voting is a fundamental right, and at a moment where our most fundamental rights and freedoms are under attack across the country, New Jersey can send a clear message that we stand for democracy, that we stand for equity, that we stand for racial justice. Same-day registration is a common sense legislation that is long overdue in our state. Over 20 states have passed this legislation in some form. Why hasn't New Jersey? That's the question we need to ask our lawmakers. What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of democracy? Are you afraid of voters like me voting? What are you afraid of? This is a common sense legislation that would not only make it easier for young voters, for voters of color, but that increases civic engagement, that increases voter turnout, that increases every single voice being heard at the polls. Unnecessary barriers to voting and barriers at any level impact our community disproportionately. This is a legislation that needs to happen, and this is the legislation that needs to happen now. That is what democracy looks like. Say it with me. What does democracy look like? This is what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like!
To our lawmakers, we need same-day registration, and we need it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandra. So, we've talked about a lot of different groups and why it affects so many of our issues. One more group that's often marginalized, who needs access to the vote, are voters with disabilities. They're often left out in conversations, but they have as much right to our democracy as the rest of us do. So today, I want to introduce Mary Ciccone from Disability Rights New Jersey.
Good morning, everybody. Actually, good afternoon. So I'm here. I'm with Disability Rights New Jersey. I'm the director of policy. I've been with Disability Rights New Jersey for a long time, and voting has been a big issue in my office and with me. People with disabilities vote at much lower rates than people without disabilities. We're doing it time and time again because there's so many barriers for people with disabilities to vote. There's issues with accessibility. There's issues with transportation. There's issues with just being able to get to the polling place. There's issues with accessible ballots. There's all kinds of issues. And what we've seen is that when barriers are removed, people with disabilities vote. Just like with everybody else. If you make it easier, people with disabilities vote. In 2020, the all mail-in ballot procedure decreased the discrepancy between people without disabilities and people with disabilities by a lot. I don't even remember exactly, but because it was easy for people to vote. Registration for people with disabilities can be as difficult and can be as much of a barrier as other things, as actually voting. People say, oh, well, they can vote or they can register at the DMV. Many people with disabilities don't try, so they never go to the Motor Vehicle Commission. People with disabilities, oh, they can register online. That's easy. A lot of people with disabilities don't have access to a computer. People with disabilities, such as people with mental health, are in and out of treatment. They're very transient. A lot of them are homeless. If they can't register 21 days because they may not know where they're going to be at the moment of the voting. So it makes it much easier if they can just go in on election day and vote. People with disabilities have issues. They have a lot of issues. They may be living at home and relying on personal aides who may or may not show up. These are kinds of things that they worry about. Trying to remember that they've got to register 21 days in advance is really hard. They know when voting day is, but they may not remember that they have to make sure that they're registered 21 days in advance. It is clear that making things easier for people with disabilities will get people with disabilities to vote, and that's what we want to do. So please, when you're out talking to people, remember people with disabilities and how same-day registration will help them in many ways that help other people as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Now I want to introduce someone else who's been personally affected by the 3-week voter registration deadline. Maurice is speaking.
How are you? Glad everybody came. My personal story is this. My name is Maurice Espino. I've been incarcerated for the past 38 years. I've just been released within the last 16 months. I was released October the 14th of 2020, and I came out with a good feeling of being able to vote, because lots of times when we're inside the prison area, we have conversations. Our conversations are being disenfranchised by some politicians that we may not like or we dislike, or the ones that we need to hold their feet to the fire and make claims on a lot of things. So when I had an opportunity to come out and vote, which was going to, I would have to register in November. I got out in October, but I didn't meet the threshold. So I wasn't able to vote that day. And it was somewhat not being able to have that freedom or that liberty once again, you know, that you feel, you know, of being able to vote, being able to make a change, being able to hold the person's feet to the fire that you're electing, or the person that's representing your community. So, you know, even with that community, within the community, they still need representation. And I'm here to be able to do that for them today, because I've been doing it my whole life. You know, because I've been incarcerated the majority of my whole life as a young man. But now, you know, I'm out here and I'm able to vote, and that's also part of a freedom that I feel. A great freedom that I feel, because before, now I know that the person that I'm voting for or the person that I am not voting for will also have to answer to a situation that I may have or my community may have. Because not only did I, in my past life and past time, brother, you know, not only did I affect the community, but I infected them as well. So now we're trying to get people that's going to affect our community in a positive way, which I'm trying to do as well. So the same day voter registration, you get out there being able to vote, being able to vote for that person or persons in which you would like to vote for, is very, very, very pleasing and satisfying. And it's very disheartening when you get out and you can't vote or you can't register because of something that you're being stigmatized for. So this same day registration is very, very vital, very, very important to the individuals that was never incarcerated and the individuals that are coming home that way. You know? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want everyone to take a second and think about that. Imagine wanting to vote in November 2020, one of the most important elections of our lifetime, and then not being able to because of the voter registration deadline. Because that's what happens to him. We
bipartisan election protection with a lot of groups that have already spoken here. Every cycle, we get calls in. We have people reaching out because of the voter registration deadline. And we have to apologize, help them register and say, next time. Now how disheartening it is to go, hey, I want to vote, and then not being able to. It is something that voter after voter feels all across the state every election. And we have to stop. There's no reason for it. So next up, Sue Altman from Working Families New Jersey.
So New Jersey has a long history of not being super cutting edge about voting. In the early 1900s, we were one of the last states to adopt the Australian ballot, which was a fancy way of saying a secret ballot. So it's no surprise because over 100 years ago, the county parties like to know exactly who was voting and exactly how they were casting their votes. But fortunately, a little bit of reform came to New Jersey in the 1920s. We have secret ballots at long last. And here we are 100 years later, and we're still trying to fight to expand the vote. Because from an electoral standpoint, the reasons that our government and our party system doesn't want to have same-day voter registration is because they know exactly who will vote. Election in and election out. They have lists, they have a system, and it's designed to suppress some vote and make sure the reliable voters always turn out. So from 1911 to 2022, we are having the exact same conversation, which is we should be increasing voter turnout, increasing enfranchisement, and maximizing voting, not keeping it under government and party control. So that's all I have to say. Other folks have said great stuff. This is a political question. This is an important question, and this is one that gets right at the heart of what this country needs right now, which is a robust and fierce and fiercely defended democracy, so we can keep this country going and moving toward a more perfect union, because boy, do we have work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Next up, Liz Glynn from New Jersey Citizen Action.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again so much for everyone joining us here today. My name is Liz Glynn. I'm the Director of Organizing with New Jersey Citizen Action. We advocate on behalf of low and middle income families across the state, many of whom we serve directly with direct services like financial coaching, eviction prevention, and tax prep. We know firsthand that many people feel like their vote doesn't matter and their voices aren't welcome. And that is not what democracy should feel like. We all know public participation and free and fair elections are the foundation of our democracy, and there should be no roadblocks for voters to access the voting booth. As many people already stated, right now in this moment of history when democracy faces real threats, and when we know people feel like their voices are being drowned out or ignored, now is not the time to pass up this opportunity to increase access to the ballot box. We have a real opportunity to set an example. It's time for New Jersey to join the many other states that have same-day voter registration. And now is the time when people need to be encouraged and hear that, yes, their voices are welcome at the ballot box. We urge the legislature to act and send a resounding message to the people across New Jersey that, yes, we want you to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. So next up, a good friend, Rachel Dawn Davis from Water Spirits.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for being gathered here today or watching. I'm Rachel Dawn Davis, Public Policy and Justice Organizer for Water Spirit, a nonprofit. Water Spirit's 20-plus years of programming and advocacy work have focused on the interconnectedness of all life, centered on water as a sustainer and source of all life.
As a ministry of peace, we have a moral and spiritual obligation to seek justice and equality, hearing the cries of the earth and the cries of the poor. This is why I'm here today. Guaranteeing our voting rights is how we ensure we can use our power. Whose power? Whose power? Our power. The power of the people to protect the earth and protect her most vulnerable areas of most concern. The Garden State is plagued with environmental injustices and has been. We should be a true Garden State where everyone in this generation and those to come has unfettered access to clean air, clean water, and healthy communities. We create this reality by electing officials who share those values and who have the moral courage to pass legislation that will safeguard our future, many of which we've spoken about today. The way we gain access to clean air and clean water and health is by removing barriers to participation in democracy. When we impede access to the polls, we impede our rights as citizens to have a healthy planet. Same-day voter registration removes these harmful barriers. We must enact it now. Furthermore, we are in a climate emergency. Thank you. The floods are coming without grand warning or magical solutions. In fact, the floods are here. Look at the wake of Ida. Look at the communities that flood every single time it rains, and sometimes when it doesn't with hazardous waste. Expanding same-day voting access in New Jersey would demonstrate to the young people, including those who walked here today, of New Jersey, that their leaders across the political spectrum believe that they should have a tangible say in their extreme, weather-filled future. Guaranteeing our voting rights connects different social justice issues throughout the Garden State, as you've seen here today and will continue to see. This is a question of equity and of redressing historical wrongs. New Jersey can right the wrongs of its particularly prolonged role in slavery, redlining, voting access barriers, pollution, poisoning to communities across generations. Whole communities sacrificed to benefit few for monetary gain that's short-lived. We have yet to experience a true moral reckoning for this ecological sin. May we have one now, starting today. Democracy, like water, is fluid. Same-day voting access rises to meet that reality. Thank you again, and thank you to our partners.
Thank you, Rachel. Up next, Ibrahim Suleimani, a friend of ours at the Institute. He's with the Transformative Justice Initiative.
How you doing, everyone? My name is Ibrahim Suleimani. I'm the Executive Director of Transformative Justice Initiative. I'm a formerly incarcerated person. When I first went to prison in 1988, I wasn't able to vote because I was only 15 years old. When I came home at 45, I wasn't able to vote because I was a prisoner. Then I joined the Institute for Social Justice and the push for 1844 no more, earned my right to vote back, and now I'm a part of Meet 'em at the Gate, where we meet those being released at the gate to help them reacclimate back into society, which also includes helping them and directing them how to vote and where to vote. However, if they aren't able to vote at that specific time that the voting process is taking place, then they're, just like Maurice just testified to, their vote is pushed off to the next one. Fortunately for myself and Antonio Shaw, who is the director of Transformative Justice Initiative, we got to vote for the first time in 2020, which effectuated a major change, a major shift in our presidency. And we were proud of that. Now we talk to people who are still in prison about them coming home and voting, and they're excited about that. However, when they come home and they can't vote because of some detail, that is very discouraging. And it takes them back to, it takes us all back to the point where we say, oh, the system doesn't work, or votes don't count, but they do count. And the system does work, but it's up to us to make it work, and this is what we're trying to do. So we ask them to vote for the next day to vote.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Up next, my colleague, Aaron Green, from the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice.
So much, I'm going to leave a quick chant. When I say democracy, you say in a day. Democracy. In a day. Democracy. In a day. Democracy. In a day. Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Green. I'm
an associate counselor at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. The Institute, a team of fierce advocates. Some are here today. We gathered, we use cutting-edge racial and social justice legal advocacy to empower people of color by building reparative systems that create wealth, transform justice, and harness democratic power from the ground up in New Jersey. We are here today to support legislation A1966, S247, same-day voter registration that will help repair some of the cracks of structural racism that are still present here in New Jersey. While we're still in the face of a global pandemic, rising white supremacist terror, and continued racial injustice, it is important that we continue to pass policies like same-day voter registration to increase access to the ballot. During a time when voting rights are under relentless attack across America in Jim Crow fashion, New Jersey needs to take a stand, embrace democracy, and join the other states in Washington, D.C. to have same-day voter registration to protect people of color from being disproportionately disenfranchised and to make voting easier, not harder. New Jersey needs to resist against these trends and hold the line for the opposite stance, to say we are not afraid of more people voting. Why should we have same-day voter registration? Well, it allows for people to vote or to register at the polls during in-person early voting and on election day. Also, studies show that there's a 5% increase in voter turnout with same-day voter registration. There's a 10 percentage point increase for young people. On an average, with black voters, Latino voters, there's an upwards increase of 17 percentage points of increase with same-day voter registration in states that have it. New Jersey has the worst racial disparity in incarceration and detention in the nation. In March of 2020, we saw over 400 people. In March of 2020, we saw the expansion of voting rights for people on probation and parole in New Jersey. But also that year, we saw in November of 2020, 400 people were released from prison that were not able to register to vote. That is an injustice. We should be making changes to change that. And same-day voter registration will allow for people to register, right? It will increase access to the ballot. And this is not a time for complacency, but a moment where we should be bold to move New Jersey from a dark past toward a brighter future. Democracy. 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 So we're pushing this legislation to pass same-day voter registration so we can have democracy. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Next up, someone I think all of us have heard from, because he inspires us all every single time he speaks, Larry Ham. People's Organization Common Progress.
Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people. Power to the people. Now I know who the strong soldiers are. What does it say in Ecclesiastes? The race belongs not to the swift, but to those who endure. And those of you who have been here from 11 until now have endured. And I thank you. And I like all the signs I see here today. We are here today, the People's Organization for Progress, to say to our legislature, pass same-day voter registration. We want A1966, S247. When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now. When do we want it? Now. I like that sign over there too. I believe that's from Micah 6:8. Yeah. What does the Lord require of you? To do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. I like that. I'm not trying to preach, I just like that. Let me say a little bit about the history, the contemporary history of same-day voter registration. This is not a new struggle here in New Jersey. It probably is a struggle that precedes my lifetime But I discovered same-day registration in the mid-1980s. In 1984, Jesse Jackson ran for president of the United States. Barack Obama was not the first. Neither was Jesse. But in our lifetime, it was one of the biggest campaigns of an African American. And part of Jesse Jackson's political platform in 1984 was same-day voter registration. And when I used to hear that, I was like, what are they talking about? Because I couldn't even imagine. Like, what? I couldn't even figure it out. You know, I was so trained to the convention, so happy to get the right to vote. The fact that we could do it on the day of the election never occurred to me. Then in the mid-1980s, we formed a chapter of the New Jersey Rainbow Coalition here in New Jersey. And one of the members of the Rainbow Coalition was an assemblyman from Middlesex County named Alan Karcher. Any of y'all remember Alan Karcher? Alan Karcher was in the assembly. He supported Jesse Jackson's campaign in '84 and in 1988. And after the campaign was over, we said we should continue the fight for same-day registration. So Alan Karcher, besides being an assemblyman and a member of the Rainbow Coalition, Carol was also a lawyer. And so Karcher went into Superior Court representing Ryan, the New Jersey Rainbow Coalition, and we sued to end what was then the 30-day registration period. See, you have 21 days now, but it used to be 30 days. And we went into court to say that the 30 days was unconstitutional. We did not win, because if we had won it, we'd have same day. There wouldn't be any more 30-day registration. But we did not win, but the judge gave us a concession. He said that the 30-day registration was onerous, and he said it should be reduced from 30 days to 21 days, and that is why we have 21-day registration in the state of New Jersey. It is directly related to the struggle for same-day registration. There is no reason in this world why this United States of America, the richest, most advanced of the industrial nations, does not have same-day registration. It is a disgrace. It is anti-democratic. We should have same-day registration. We should have it right now. If I went to one of the European countries, if I went to the Netherlands, or if I went to Sweden, or even if I went to Germany, if I said register to vote, they'd look at me like I was crazy. Do you know, in some countries, there is no voter registration. You are born, you get a number when you are born, and you're registered for the rest of your life, and that should be how it should be in the United States of America. All of this stuff, voter registration, deadlines, cutoffs, addresses, marriage names, not names, all of that is designed to suppress voting in the United States. We should remove all barriers to voting and become a truly democratic country. That would be true democracy. All these little bureaucratic things they have. Well, what is the technological reason for not having voter registration? We got computers that can compute at the speed of light. What is the technological reason? What is the financial reason? What is the moral reason? There is no reason other than there are people who do not want a fully participatory democracy.
people to come out in a tidal wave, because in that tidal wave of voting, some of them would be swept away. Swept away. You think I'm joking? Some of them would be swept away. You think this is the best of all possible worlds. I'm telling you it's not. Look how this country was founded. When it was founded, the only people that could vote were white men with property. White men that didn't have property didn't get the right to vote until the 19th century. Black people did not have the right to vote. 265 years, we didn't have the right to do anything. We were enslaved. It took a civil war. More Americans died in the Civil War than in World Wars I, II, Vietnam, and Korea combined. That's what it took to get us the right to vote. Women didn't get the right to vote until the 20th century. Somebody talk to me. Tell me why women did not have the right to vote until the 20th century. Native Americans didn't get the right to vote until around after World War II. They couldn't vote. It has always been a struggle between democratic forces and anti-democratic forces. And I'm telling you today, we face one of the most significant challenges we have ever had in our lifetime. There are people who are trying to seize power. There's a growing fascist movement. You call it what you want. I know some of y'all want to hear authoritarianism. That's what you want to call it. That's your business. I'm going to call it as I see it. And I think it's a fascist movement. It's an anti-democratic movement. What they want to impose on us is another system of white minority rule. But I'm here to tell them today that the future of the United States of America is the future of a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious democracy in which all human beings, regardless of race, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation, in which all human beings will participate. That is the future of this country. That's what we should be fighting for. So yes, we support this struggle for same-day registration. But, you know, I hate to be asked to talk. Because if I talk, I know I'm going to piss somebody off. What is the when stuff is not happening in Washington, they say it's the Republicans. What is the reason here in New Jersey?
Thank you.
The Democrats control the Assembly. They control the Senate. They control the governor's office. Why do we have to be here rallying and begging and pleading for people who represent us to do what we ask? We have to build a movement to have a truly representative government. That's what we have to build. And same-day registration is one stop along the way. So I want to thank the Institute, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters, and I want to thank everybody that makes this day possible today. But the question is, what are we going to do after today? What are we going to do? We got to fight, brothers and sisters. We have no choice. You know, I'm going to end with this. I'm not a country music kind of guy, but I heard a song once. There's a better world a-coming. I tell you why. A better world a-coming, I tell you why. We are marching, we are battling. We can hear the chains are rattling. There's a better world a-coming, I'll tell you why. Thank you. Power to the people.
Next up, Ilana Kensi from the New Brunswick NAACP.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Larry. I don't know. I wasn't here to speak today, but I guess I got to follow Larry. So what can I say? I'm here with the New Brunswick NAACP, and I'll be brief. We're here with this coalition today to say we want same-day voter registration in New Jersey now. So please, get it done. Thank you.
So today we've been here talking about same-day registration and why it impacts so many of our issues, so many of our values. And it's long past time for us to have it. We need same-day registration. It leads to higher voter turnout for young people, for Black voters, for Latino voters. So let me give you some stats right here. We mentioned earlier, same-day registration across the country, states that have it have a 5% turnout increase because of same-day registration. For young voters, it's a 10 percentage point increase. For Black and Latino voters, there's a study that came out just last year that showed up to a 17% increase that compared in states that have same-day registration versus states that don't. It's an important issue, which is why I'm honored to present our next speaker, a co-sponsor of the S247 and champion of this legislation, Senator Bramnick.
John Bramnick, Republican. I sponsored the bill for one simple reason. If you're eligible to vote, you should vote. That's it. Complicated.
Well said. It's as common sense as that. If someone is eligible to vote, why are we making it hard for them to vote? So thank you all for coming today. This was a great crowd. I want to thank all of our speakers, all of the sponsors of the legislation, all the sponsors of our rally. Thank you so much for supporting this important issue. We are so grateful, and together we are going to strengthen our democracy today. Together we are going to bring same-day voter registration to New Jersey because we all deserve democracy today. Thank you.